Hello, and welcome to the Empowerography Podcast. This is a platform created for women's voices to be heard and a place to share their stories, journeys, and successes with the world for the purpose of helping other women who might be on similar journeys. We are empowering women one episode at a time. I'm your host, Brad Walsh, so kick back, grab one of your favorite beverages, and enjoy the stories. The world needs to hear your message and your story, so don't deny the world of that gift within you that the universe has given you. Someone out there needs to hear your story because it will support them in feeling hope, inspired, and even transformed. Do you want to discover how I help get my clients out of their own way, show up, and confidently share their message? I would love to extend an invitation to you to join me in my free masterclass, Start Your Own Podcast from Idea to Implementation, on Wednesday, April 5th at 1 p.m. Eastern. You can find the registry link in the show notes. Hope to see you there. Hello there, Brad Walsh here, your host of the Empowerography Podcast. Today, my guest is Phyllis Ayman. She is an ambassador for conscious aging life management, the founder of Mindful Longevity Solutions. She owns the trademark for EMPathy, the hallmark of the EMPathy Project. She is a best-selling author, a coach, a gerontological speech and language pathologist, dementia care specialist, and a podcast host. Wow, that is an exhausting list just thinking about and saying those titles. It's a hell of a lot of hats that you wear and quite an extensive resume. How on earth do you find the time for all of this, and how do you prioritize, and how important is prioritization and organization to you, Phyllis?
That's a great question. I actually think I struggle with that a little bit, to be perfectly honest, because they're all very important to me. And they come from this root of, I believe, from my profession and I call myself a gerontological speech and language pathologist because I've spent over 40,000 hours working in long-term care environments, primarily skilled nursing facilities and nursing homes. And so, everything that stems from that comes from that same root, that same passion. And so I can't really say this is more important to me than another thing, but sometimes that is problematic for me because you have to have priorities. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
So that's part of that story. It's a great question that you asked.
Well, that's a lot. I mean, that's a lot that you do. So you would have to prioritize in order to get shit done.
Exactly. I'm starting to be better at it, actually. I set a few hours during the day I had intended to work 3 hours on this project today, but I have to answer, like yesterday, something came up.
Yeah.
I'm also...
Here we go. Let's add something else into the mix.
I'm also an expert on this platform called babyboomer.org. Okay. And it's going to launch in its full bloom soon. It just really launched. My books are on there and my blogs, but I also have several courses on there. And so the other day, the IT person sent me what he had listed, and I really had to go through my courses and send him timestamps. Well, that took quite an amount of time, and I had to fit that in because they had to get it on the platform. So obviously I had to be flexible enough to, add and subtract.
Absolutely. Yeah, flexibility is definitely key because, like you said, things are always going to pop up. It's life. Life happens, and we have to deal with it. We have to roll with the punches and just make do when those things come up. So I'm very curious then, with you wearing so many hats and being a serial entrepreneur, what does your morning routine look like?
I'm sorry to say that I don't have a specific one, which is antithetical to success habits, really.
Right.
I do make an effort. Well, I should say I have one in particular, and it's a mind hack. And I do it in the morning and the evening before I go to bed. And in the morning, first thing when I wake up, I really spend about 5 minutes just making gratitude statements.
Yeah.
And it could be about the simplest thing.
Right.
People think gratitude is, could be this, it has to be this large idea.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be. It could be something very simple. So I was grateful that I'm, going to have this podcast discussion with you today.
Yeah.
I was grateful that some people sent me introductions to some people that, are probably going to be fantastic conversations. I was grateful that, I have something else scheduled later on today. I was grateful that I was able to send the guy the timestamps yesterday, and that now my first course will be launched on the platform. So, it sets you up for positivity. I think that's an important morning routine because we all have these tapes running in the background. And, they say we have between 50 and 80,000 thoughts running through our mind throughout the day, and 90% of them are negative. So I think it's important for me, especially, to really set up this positive mindset. Actually, it's important for everybody.
It is. To get in that routine, right?
Right. Gratitude journals, they say, write 3 statements in the morning or at night. Same thing at night, because it just kind of sets that tape up for positivity. Exactly. Rather than thinking about, the stresses.
I didn't get this done, or I didn't get that done, and just stay positive. And it sets you up when you drift off into sleep. You've gone off with that positive mindset, and then you wake up and do it all over again, and just keep doing that. Make it a routine. It's absolutely important and integral, I think, to staying on top of things, staying positive, and being in gratitude.
Yeah. And, it's so easy. Obviously, like you say, we all have challenges.
Yeah.
But if you're in the throes of it, it's, you're probably not thinking positively at that moment. But afterwards, if it's momentary or after a period of time, you can somehow shift and say, gee, either let me look forward to the next positive thing, or, we all have challenges, but what can we get out of it? What can we take from it?
What's the lesson in there? Yeah.
Yeah, it's absolutely not so easy. I'm not saying it's easier said than done, but it's training. You have to train your mind to do that.
100%. Phyllis, what drives, motivates, and inspires you to keep going and pushing and excelling at all that you do?
Well, that's a great question. Some days it's tougher than others.
Yeah.
Right? I think it's the mission. It's my big vision goal, which is really to inspire a national conversation and really raise the collective consciousness about how we value, care for, and treat older adults. Because after spending over 40,000 hours in these long-term care settings and seeing that most of them, because people probably have an image that they conjure up about what these, environments are like, and probably they're correct. I believe the root cause of that is that we don't value older adults. We think, okay, they're past their prime, they've done their bit. We might love them in our families and our communities, amongst our friends, but as a larger society, we don't really value older adults, like they're done. So,
I would agree with that. And I think that's a horrible way to look at things. These people, these elderly people, they're grandparents, they are parents. They deserve the respect.
Absolutely. So I have this philosophy, I've written about it, that, to change people's perspectives, you really have to start when they're young, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree.
So I have this philosophy, and, as time goes on, let's see if I can make inroads in this arena in the educational system. Because if we could have children think that they are like evolving elders, that's an active process that lives inside of them. And it's something to aspire to, like people aspire to climbing Mount Everest. Actually, I know somebody who knows somebody who left for base camp yesterday.
Okay.
Or we use the word senior, when we're in high school or in college. I mean, it seems like such a great thing. Why don't we think of that in terms of life in our years?
Exactly.
And so if we can inspire children to think that it's an active process inside of them, something they want to achieve, then maybe when they look at older people, they'll have that kind of respect. It just dawned on me as we're talking, my granddaughter, the oldest one, she'll be 10.
Yeah.
And I remember a couple of years ago, and I remember myself as a little girl crying that she wants to be like her mommy, right? So, and little boys probably want to be like their daddies to a certain extent, right?
Yeah.
And so what is that? They want to achieve that. They want to get there. But somehow we don't think about that in terms of getting older. And I think we need to do that.
You're right. I remember hearing Gary Vee talk about this in a conversation or a video he was presenting. And he said, he's speaking to a younger crowd, 20s and 30 something. He said, if you want to learn lessons about life, go fucking volunteer in an old age facility.
Right.
Sit and have conversations with these people. They can teach you so much through their experience. And it's true. I think that should be somehow integrated into what do you call it? Co-op programs in high schools. Have them go work in a long-term care facility.
I think that's great. As a matter of fact, near me, I'm in Connecticut, but right on the border of New York. The State University of New York has a campus not far from me, and they are building on their campus an adult living residence.
Wow.
I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, obviously, listen, I've had those experiences. Some of the greatest things I have learned have been from the people that I have been caring for in long-term care environments. I remember once, I think it was when I turned 50, and I was doing an assessment on someone, and I asked her age, and she asked what age I am. And I said, well, I'm nearer than further. And when I told her I was 50, she said, you're just a kid. And I realized she was right. Like, she was 85.
Yeah.
So when I was born, she was 35. I am a kid, and I don't have those years of experience.
No.
And now that I'm 70, I turned 70 earlier this year. Obviously, my perspective is different, and the experiences I've had in the last 20 years, even in the last year, have just contributed tremendously to how I continue evolving.
Absolutely. As mentioned, you do a lot of work, obviously, around and with geriatric patients, long-term care, dementia. I'm curious what inspired you to get into working in this field, and specifically speech and language pathology?
So that's a great question. Well, speech and language pathology, I think, was twofold.
Okay.
It was kind of like default because I didn't know of any other way to channel that interest. But when I was a little girl, and I haven't thought about this for a very long time, and
I got you thinking. I love
it. My mother used to take me, we used to go to museums a lot.
Okay.
And I used to love standing in front of a painting and hearing the people from all different parts of the world with all different accents and speaking in different languages talking. And it developed a real interest in speech. That was the first thing. And then I had a high school teacher. I remember her name, and it was just a communications course, but her voice was like a bird, and it was so melodic. It was so beautiful. And so that inspired me in the speech direction. But how I got to working in long-term care or speech therapy, well, when I was about 13, a family moved into where we lived on our block, and their son had cerebral palsy. And at the time, they were involved in, I think it was the Bobath method, if I remember correctly, where we would do patterning, and the whole community was involved. People would go in several times a day and do this patterning. The idea was to kind of reprogram his brain. And so I think that sparked an interest in working with people who had some kind of impairment, right?
Right.
So that was one thing. But when I was 15, we moved my grandmother into a nursing home not far from where we lived, because she had lived 2.5 hours away. My mother would spend several times a week traveling there, and she had had Parkinson's and the results of a broken hip. And that trip became difficult for my mother and took its toll on all of us.
Yes.
And so she moved into a nursing home a few blocks away from us. And there was a period of time my parents were on vacation, and my sister and I took turns caring for her during the same hours that my mother would have been there. And I think because of that initial experience, when I walked in there the first time, which was, if we think nursing homes are horrific now, they were worse then, just left an indelible mark on my mind and my heart. And I really believe that was the through line to getting me into the nursing home space.
What excites or lights you up the most then, or is the most rewarding thing about the work that you do, Phyllis?
So I had an interesting experience recently. It was just tangential. I was at an event, and I ran into somebody I knew who was walking with this young fellow, and we got into a conversation. He told me that his father had early onset Alzheimer's. And so I started asking him questions, and we wound up spending a little bit of time together because of the meeting that these two gentlemen were having. And he told me a little bit, so I already got the picture of where his father was at. I gave him a recommendation, and then I followed up with an email, and I sent him some articles and some information and suggestions. And he sent me back an email that meeting me and that Well, actually, I mean, I'm not patting myself on the back, but that it was.
No, why
it was
not?
like it was like a gift. And that really does it for me, that I was able to impact him and his family in such a positive way. And it was just happenstance. Well, it was synchronicity. Otherwise, we didn't plan this meeting. It wasn't like a client who called me and, our family and told me their situation. I said, okay, I can help you in this way. This was just synchronicity, right? It just came together at the right time. So
it's beautiful to get those words of affirmation,
right, that
letting
really,
you know.
That really, really floats my boat. And I can do that.
I love that term. It touches your heart. It's an incredible feeling to know that you have given and impacted another human being's life. And when they reflect that back to you, it fills your heart. It makes my soul smile when I get things like that, when I experience things like that. It's so incredible. It fills my cup.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think people realize how much of an impact they make on other people.
You're right.
And it could be something very simple. It doesn't have to be because a person has any particular profession. I mean, I find, it's people's personality, obviously also, but just a smile sometimes
I was just going to say that.
Online at the grocery store, and you don't know the ripple effect. It's like when you throw a stone in the water and you see the ripples, you don't know how that has not only impacted that person, but because of how that made them feel, how that will impact the next person. So I just want to give you another little example, and it is about me, but it really touched me. So it was several months ago, I wrote a blog, and I don't really post on Facebook that much. I should do more, but I don't. And I put this blog up on Facebook. And somebody reached out to me, and this is the son of someone I helped, who I met in a nursing home many years ago. And I stayed in touch with him. I helped them get his father home and helped him with his eating, from a professional perspective. And we stayed in touch for a while, and then obviously we lost touch, right? And I posted this blog, and he reached out to me and said how much he was always touched by the kindness and the caring. So those kinds of things you don't know. I would never have known. This is years later.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
The ripple effect for each and every one of us, we could have such an important impact in the world, even by just a smile.
That's right.
Right? It's
that
so
triggers
simple.
that you could make someone's day just by smiling at, because you don't know what that person you're walking past on the street is going through. You don't know what they're dealing with. So a smile, something as simple as a smile, can completely turn someone's day around. And that is powerful. To be able to do that for another human being is incredible.
Very powerful. I just read something yesterday. Oh, I don't remember who said it. I read it on LinkedIn. Somebody wrote it. Oh gosh, but it was something like, and maybe one of the listeners might know the roots of this, something about going to a hotel lobby and shake people's hands and smile and say hello to a person who makes eye contact with you. Huh. And I thought it was so interesting because even when you walk along the street, I'm in the New York area. Yeah. And so people have a tendency not to look at each other for whatever reason without going down that road. But you see such a difference when you do smile at somebody.
Yeah.
Right? And I say a smile is the least expensive accessory that goes with every outfit.
I love that. That's beautiful, Phyllis. Thank you for sharing that. Now, on the flip side of this, what is one of the most difficult parts about the work that you do?
Well, I think it's seeing through the years that I worked in nursing homes. It's not an easy journey. As people don't even understand sometimes if they have a loved one in that kind of environment, and they see people laughing and talking and joking. And I had a family member many, many, many years ago who said, she went to the nurse's station. They're all laughing and talking about where they're going out to dinner. They don't care. And I said, not at all. I said, it's a survival mechanism, because if we really thought about all of this, each and every one, we couldn't do it. I mean, my specialty for many years was working with people who were dependent on ventilation, mechanical ventilation, which most people never even thought about until they heard about it during COVID.
Yeah.
So that was really my specialty and my passion. And it's not an easy journey. It tugs at your heart.
For sure it does. Well, you're a human being. You have feelings and you're empathetic. Obviously, to be working in this industry, you have to be.
Right. So it's not easy. I think that's one of the hardest parts.
Yeah.
And even now that I'm away from that and in this other direction, which we'll talk about, it's when I see people who are suffering, who aren't taking the best care of themselves, and then wind up with a variety of conditions that I don't believe they really need to have in all cases. If they made different choices, it hurts me, you know, because I want to help them. I come from that helping place.
You have spent a lot of time, as you said, 40,000 hours working in long-term care. And how has the world of being in long-term care, working in it for so long, evolved from, say, the time you started your career up until today? And has it changed for the better, or has it gotten progressively worse in terms of the care and how things are run?
So that's a good question. I think there are many sides to that answer. Okay. So when I first started out, nobody even really cared about speech pathology or what a speech therapist was. It was like a necessary evil.
Right.
They really didn't care. And I had to learn how to make it relevant for the people who owned or ran nursing homes. And then it changed because the reimbursement structure changed. And then it became a little bit more relevant. And then as time went on, it became a little more relevant. And actually, the things that I was saying many years earlier, all of a sudden people cared about. It's true. My services were retained by somebody to write how to develop a speech program because nobody really knew how to do it, because nobody really cared about it. And that was really what I was after. It wasn't just going in when I was called to do an evaluation for the one person maybe that had a stroke, or that's really who they cared about at the time. So I was always trying to make it more relevant for the larger community that lived there. So I had developed different strategies, developed different programs. So when the changes came about, people came to me and said, oh, can you write this up and teach this to people? So I actually did do that. But I think as time has gone on, now it's flipped back a little bit because reimbursement, it was abused for a variety of ways without going into the specifics of that. It was abused. And so now, you know, I said that when some of the changes first came out, I said to people, listen, they're going to look at this down the road. And I'm telling you, it's not going to be a pretty picture. And sure enough, that's what happened. Right. And so now it's kind of turned in the other direction a little bit. Not that they don't care about speech and language pathology, because there are still ways they could benefit from that. But it just doesn't have the same impact that it did before. And the other thing is, well, nursing homes in the past just weren't great places because nobody really cared about them. Now it's become such a business. It is a true business. And because of that, it's a money-driven business and a real estate-driven business. And so that is really the base of the business model, not caring for people.
Which is horrible. I mean,
I'm sorry to say.
I'd love to further get on to this. And so what would you say then are the top 3 biggest issues within the long-term care systems that you've seen emerge in the last, like, I guess you're not working in that particular area anymore, but in the last decade that you were involved, and I mean, I'm sure you still have contact with the long-term care facilities. So what have you seen as the top 3 issues that have emerged in the last decade or so versus when you first got involved?
Well, I think everybody probably knows that nursing homes suffer from inadequate staffing. So that's a major, major, major issue, because everything, you could almost say everything stems from inadequate staffing. So inadequate staffing is going to lead to inadequate care or inadequate caring.
Yeah.
And while there is oversight, I mean, there are tremendous issues with oversight. People become familiar with the people doing the oversight. And then penalties aren't really the answer, especially if they're nominal penalties. You know, the nursing home industry is a tremendous lobby with tremendous influence. So I see that as an issue. I would say the inadequate staffing. I'd say the fact that it's become such a business and it's mostly a real estate business.
Yeah.
And then I'd say also that, you know, the lobbying, there's a lot of money that goes into the lobbying for the nursing home industry. I'm going to give you an example.
Sure.
Okay. I wrote about it in my first book. Obviously, I'm not going to say where or the name of the company. That's irrelevant. I would never do that because I might not be sitting here talking to you. No. But seriously, so this was something I found when I was writing my first book, which was in 2017. And there was a politician who was running for office, and there was a person who owned a company, and this person was applying to own another building or another set of buildings. But they had tremendous deficiencies in that building, serious deficiencies. And so if you had those kinds of deficiencies, you really shouldn't be allowed to be buying more buildings because you already have serious neglectful situations in the buildings you already own.
Exactly.
However, as with many situations in this country and many countries, not just America, but, countries around the world, money talks and politics makes for strange bedfellows. And this particular owner contributed a sizable amount of money to this politician's campaign. And sure enough, he was allowed to buy other buildings. So I'm just saying that, that's the way, unfortunately, it goes. And as I say, it's very antithetical to me because you've gone into the taking care of people business.
Yeah, exactly. It's how then, in your opinion, do you think we can begin to repair or fix the issues that are plaguing the long-term care facilities and start getting better treatment for the elderly? I mean, I know here in Canada, things are horrible in the homes too. They get treated like crap. And I know firsthand as I saw the conditions because my grandmother was in a long-term care facility and it was disgusting. Honestly, Phyllis, I would walk in there and I swear to God, I was walking onto the set of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. It was horrible to see these people sitting around so they had the reception desk and then it was in like a circular area. You go off down different hallways and you'd see these elderly people sitting in wheelchairs and talking to themselves and drooling it's horrible. And they're just there sitting there like they're statues, like they're furniture.
I was just going to say like a bag of flowers, people to people.
Yeah.
So there are other models of care. They've been developed by many different people. There's one model in the United States that was developed by a brilliant guy. He's one of my favorite people, both personally and professionally. He knows that. So it's kind of an open secret. Actually, after I got to know him and after a period of time, I said to him, Bill, I'm sure you've heard. He said, yes, I have. But there are other models of care in the United States. He developed something called the Greenhouse Project, the Eden Alternative. It really is about person-centered caring. It's about dignity. It's about respect. It's about quality of life, life with purpose. There are only about 300 of them around the country in the United States now, but they really do provide a different kind of living. I visited several of them and I would live there. I mean, it's living. It's really living. But I really believe that you don't have to redesign your building according to some of the constructs that those models follow, but it's a mindset shift.
Yeah.
It's how you think about the people that are living in your environment. And so from my perspective, it really starts with the people that are in your employ who you want to care for the people that they're supposed to be caring for. And that actually, if I can, I'll segue into my empathy.
Sure, absolutely.
Because that's where it started. I was actually doing a training in a building, upstate New York, based on a 1-hour presentation I did at their annual seminar. And it was called Communication and Empathy, Improving Behavioral Outcomes. And they had me come and train the entire staff. It was really great. It was over 3 days, 3 sessions, several sessions a day over for each shift. Anyway, and during this program, I was doing these exercises because how are you going to get in touch with another person if you're not in touch with yourself? So I did some exercises around those lines. And there was a guy there who did mindfulness training and meditation. He said, it's like the inner game of empathy and self-empathy. And I went home and I started thinking about it and I came up with this word empathy. So I wound up trademarking it and I have a program that goes along with it. So I started really doing this in healthcare facilities and for individuals, for healthcare workers and for families, right? Because people are what I call in S.O.S mode, stressed, overwhelmed, and stretched, right?
Right.
And so as time went on, I realized that if leadership management cared for the people and they invested in the self-care of the people that worked for them, they would be more resilient. They would be less burned out. That would help them personally with themselves, in their family relationships, but would also help them in caring for the people that they're caring for.
I just want to jump in here because this boggles my mind. And it's such a simple concept as you just laid out. And I think if all corporations took a page from that and realized that, you know what, if we treat our staff well and with respect, they are going to work that much harder for us. They are going to work that much better because they'll come to work happy because they're happy to be there. If they're treated well, they're going to reciprocate that. And it will reflect in the work that they do. It will reflect in their personal life. It's a very simple concept, yet these fucking corporations can't get it through their goddamn heads. I don't get it.
I mean, and so I've been pounding the pavement. So that's my new passion, actually. I've been pounding the pavement about that for quite some time to get businesses. And I guess I'd start with medium-sized businesses, but there are some larger businesses and corporations that get it. I mean, Google gets it. In Japan, they get it. There are some places that do get it. But so I have this program that goes along with it. And my really big vision goal as far as business goes is for businesses to really want to invest in the self-care of their workforce, because in turn, it will not only improve their work performance, even if they want to think about it from a selfish point of view, they will be more productive and it will benefit the bottom line. And, I thought about it when I couched it that way. I thought, gee, that's not much different than when I was developing speech and language programs, clinical programs, and building where I made it relevant for their reimbursement, for their bottom line. Because I'm not saying people shouldn't care about their bottom line.
Of course they should. They're a business. It's
right, but it's how you get there.
That's right. And it shouldn't be the absolute focus. The people should be first. And these companies preach this people first bullshit. I worked for a company like that, corporation, and it was complete bullshit. No, it wasn't. It's all about the bottom line. And you know what I think would also help bolster this is if we start teaching the mindfulness and things like that in schools. Teach the children. They are the future. They're going to be moving into and working in these corporations, in this world. So why wouldn't we teach our children about mindfulness, meditation, self-care? They need to learn. With all the bullshit that they teach in schools, get rid of the crap that they don't use in their lives, that they're never going to use, and teach them skills that they can actually utilize throughout the course of their lives.
Well, these are life skills, just like they don't teach finance. They don't teach
home economics, shop, all of these things.
We used to have those.
Yes, we did. I did too.
And not only that, they don't teach you parenting.
No.
And they should teach something about parenting, in my opinion.
I agree.
Because there are no handbooks. And you learn from what you gleaned from your parents, both positive and negative.
Yes.
Sometimes you don't even think you're going to pass on the negative, but you do anyway because that's what you know, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Know it intimately well. And sometimes we can't help that. I don't know about you, but I've heard my daughter say, I can't believe I said that. And I remember saying that, I can't believe I said that. Do it because I told you to. What?
Yeah, because I said so. Wait a minute. When did you become the judge and jury?
Right. I remember, I tell this story very often. I was about 13 at the time, and we used to go to Chinese restaurants on Sunday. And I came from a Jewish family, and my mother we had a very kosher home in the home, but not outside the home, but very, very kosher in the home. And I remember that I could see the picture. We were sitting in this Chinese restaurant. My mother was eating a spare rib or an egg roll or something. And I told her, well, there was pork in there. And, we weren't allowed to eat that in the house. And so she said to me, so I'm 70, so I was 13. So that was 57 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So she told me what parents said probably for the most part 57 years ago, shut up and mind your business.
Children are to be seen and not heard at the table.
So now fast forward, when my daughter was I think she was about 6, we went on vacation for a few days and they had a, buffet, and they had frog's legs on this buffet. And I took some frog's leg and my daughter wanted to try it. And my my husband at the time, said to her, do you know what that is? That's from a frog. And he said, ribbit, ribbit, like we make the sound of frog. And she turned to him and said, well, you eat duck, don't you? Quack, quack. And that was the end of the conversation. Now,
there you go.
When I was little, I might not be sitting here and talking to you.
Yeah, you would have got a backhand and that would have been it, right? Because again, I can remember my mom telling me stories when she was growing up, and my grandfather was, children are to be seen and not heard at the table. You don't speak unless you're spoken to at the dinner table, and that's it. It's like, can you imagine that now? Like, what?
Absolutely not. Although I didn't 100% come from that. I have to be honest. My father, he thought it was very important to know what's going on in your community, in your state, in your country. He read the newspaper every night. We listened to the news every day. And he would always bring up topics of conversation. He would always ask, not did you have a good day, but tell me something you did in school. Tell me something you learned. Then we'd have a conversation. So I kind of grew up in a household where questioning was very important. And he always encouraged me to ask questions. So
that's how you learn.
That is one of the fundamental ways you learn, whether you're listening to somebody and asking questions or you question based on something you're reading or seeing. It's about questioning.
Absolutely. I want to talk a little bit about your journey into the world of being an author. You've mentioned that you've written books. You're a best-selling author. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience, the title of the book, what it was all about?
So it started with the nursing home industry. I had been talking about writing a book for a while. And actually, just yesterday, I was looking through some old papers and found the beginning of a book I was started with a social worker I worked with 25 years ago.
Holy cow.
But we never finished that project. But it was about the same thing, about educating families, bringing people's attention. And that's before all of this really started, right? But where I specifically started, I was working in this nursing home, this skilled nursing facility. They had called me. They had heard about me. And the place went from not-for-profit to for-profit. That's another thing I would tell people to look out for. If it's for-profit, that's you really have to ask your questions, do your due diligence, see who owns it, because that's a very different world than not-for-profit. And so they had called me to develop the program there. They took ownership on a Friday and I came in on a Monday because they had heard about the programs I developed. Anyway, after about a year and a half, the administrator, who I like very much, even to this day, said, we don't need you anymore. I could get 2 for the price of you. You've done a great job, but thanks.
Wow.
I was devastated. Had he not said that to me that day, I might still be there. But maybe it's a good thing he did. Who knows?
There you go. Yes.
And I still call him Jake. I could get 2 for the price of you guy. It's become a joke. So it's nice that I could laugh about it that way, and he can too. But anyway, nevertheless, that company, that was in Westchester County, and they did own several nursing homes in that area and in New York. I found out they had purchased a building in Nashville, Tennessee. And I was like, what is this guy from Long Island doing in Nashville, Tennessee? Like, I had never heard of such a thing up to that point. And so I started looking into it. And then I said, oh my God, this is not a local story because, when you work in an arena in a specific area, you know the people in that arena and you think the issues are related only to that area.
Yeah.
So, you live in kind of a cocoon.
Yeah.
So now I said, oh my God, I'd started doing research. I said, this is a national issue. Oh my goodness gracious. Somebody needs to write about this. I mean, I didn't know people had already written about it, but somebody needs to write about this and inform people so they really know what their rights are. They need to become more informed and effective advocates. And I remember doing some research, coming across this woman who had been working in the field for decades. And I reached out to her. We had a wonderful conversation and she encouraged me. And that was the beginning of my journey in writing. That was my first book. It was called Nursing Homes to Rehabilitation Centers, What Every Person Needs to Know. It got very academic and in the weeds. And I thought, oh, I wrote a book. Oh, here I am.
I've arrived.
It doesn't go like that.
No.
And then I realized only about a year and a half or 2 years later, it wasn't very readable. It became very academic, that book. So then I decided to kind of repurpose it.
Okay.
And I was listening to some publishing challenge and he said something about re-releasing a book. And I said, oh, I think I'll do that. And so I did. And then the next one was called Overdue, Quality Care for Our Elder Citizens, which indeed is overdue. And then I wanted to write another one. And the last one that is my own book is Dignity and Respect. Are our aging parents getting what they deserve? We know the answer is no.
Yeah.
And then since then, I've been a contributing author, a co-author in a couple of books. And that's how I got to number one Wall Street Journal and USA bestseller. But, you know, I continue to write. I have another chapter coming out in the next couple of months in a book called Impact. And it is about empathy. It's about going from S.O.S, stressed, overwhelmed, and stretched, to S.O.S, strategies of success.
I love that.
That's the chapter coming out in a couple of months, I think.
Beautiful. Well, that's a great segue into talking about another platform because you're also a podcast host. Can you share with us a little bit about the podcast, what it's all about, the title, content, all of these things, and what inspired you?
So that's interesting. And I would I think we had a wonderful conversation before this started.
Yes, we did.
And you had sent me some ideas for talking points and questions, things you wanted me to think about. And one of the questions was, what would you tell your younger self, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes you just don't know where your background is going to lead. And I would say to be open to your passions and your ideas and don't be afraid of them. That's one thing I would say. So how did I get to, who would ever have thought that I would be doing a podcast? Never in 1.5 million years. Trust me. I would say, you're nuts. But, and I would also say, don't be afraid to take the first leap, even if you don't see the entire staircase. I found that phrase someplace. So what happened was I had written this first book and, okay, nobody cared. Right. And I didn't even have a website. I mean, I didn't know what to do with it. I just thought I wrote a book and somehow the world would know.
Yeah.
I wrote this book. I mean, how ridiculous was that? But okay, whatever. You don't know what you don't know. That's right. Another thing. You don't know what you don't know. And so I called the local radio station and I said I wanted to come and talk about this book. I knew the owner of the radio station. I didn't know if he was still there, but I knew him and the manager of the station. I had met him through my local chamber of commerce. I was very active in that for a couple of years. And so I called a few times. And then one day I got a phone call and the manager asked me about it. And he said, I have the perfect show for you. And the gal called me and she said, okay, come on the show. Now, here's the thing. I had never really been in a radio studio before. And I walked in, I said, what the heck was I thinking? Are you nuts? Anyway, we had a phenomenal conversation. Well, she's a phenomenal host. She's been at it for a very long time and is a communications person. And I think she studied theater. I mean, she brings all of that to it. Right. Anyway, nevertheless, I thanked her in an email, a follow-up email, and she sent me back an email saying that I was a natural and I would have my own show someday. And I was like, I don't know what the heck she's talking about. What? Anyway.
In 1 million years, one of those moments again, right?
Exactly. But when I left there, I was so thrilled with the conversation. I said, I'd like to come back. And so I came back about a month later. And then we decided that I would come every 3 or 4 weeks, which I did for about 1.5 years. And then after about a year, she had me bring on my own guests on her show. So it was a guest of a guest. I guess she was leading me to try and do the show on their network. But it's a local business network. Yeah. And I was in conversations with somebody I was introduced to. And I said to her, why don't we do a podcast? She also came from this space, more assisted living. She was a gerontologist. And I started looking at platforms and I came across Voice America. And I contacted them, and they thought this would be a great idea because obviously, this segment of the population is growing by leaps and bounds. So the first show was called Voices for Elder Care Advocacy. And that gal dropped out of it, but I knew somebody else in California. We had forged some kind of relationship. And I asked her if she would sponsor the show. She said, gee, can I be your co-host? I said, sure. So we did that for about a year or so. And like I said, it was called Voices for Elder Care Advocacy. And then after a time, I just felt it needed more energy, needed a different name. And I guess I wanted to forge doing it on my own. The reason being, really, we had interviewed many thought leaders and we covered many topics. All we say, bringing informative conversations to the senior years of our lives. Actually, that's the tagline for the podcast, which the title is Seniors Straight Talk. And that's the tagline, bringing informative conversations to the senior years of our lives. So it's not only about interviewing thought leaders, it's interviewing many, many people. And really, when I started it, at that point, I had written a couple of books. I kind of wanted to prove to myself that I could hold my own in a conversation with some of these really big thought leaders in my space. Okay. And that's what I did. And I've interviewed some phenomenal people, entrepreneurs, people in my space. I interviewed Bill Thomas, who developed the greenhouse homes and the Eden Alternative several times, and many politicians. I did interview a national lobbyist for the nursing home industry, interestingly enough. His name is Mark Parkinson. People ask me how I got that interview. I said, well, you just have to keep at it. I told Bill Thomas a couple of weeks ago when we were on the phone, relentless, my name should be under the definition of the word relentless. People probably say, oh, here she comes again.
Again, this woman.
I used to say that in nursing homes. I used to, address the elephant in the room.
Yeah. I
used to go say it to an administrator, a director of nurses. I know what you're thinking. Here she comes again. Can somebody do something with her? Why do we still have her here? It was because I was saying they need to do something better and programming
change
and
things,
all of that and change. And people are very comfortable with where they are and they don't always want to make change.
Absolutely.
Even if it's for the betterment of the environment, it's just change is uncomfortable.
Yeah, absolutely.
The only thing you could really depend on is change.
Yep, for sure.
Because change is coming.
For sure. Phyllis, what do you think your unique skill set or superpower is that's helped you become successful?
Well, I think I just hit on it a little bit. It's relentlessness. I think it's also following your vision, not being afraid to follow that, not be limited. Everybody talks about limited mindset, limited thinking. The flip side of that for me is I have so many creative ideas. It is sometimes difficult to rein them in and focus on one or two or three, let's say, that are really on the direct path of where I'm going. I am getting better at that. But, it's just what I said, like, who would have ever thought that I would have been doing a podcast? It never is something that would have entered my mind. I would say, that I'm not afraid to take that leap of faith. You might not be successful at it. You might fail, but what do they say about Wayne Gretzky? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Exactly.
Isn't that true?
Yeah, 100%.
Look, I'm in the process of raising money for a screenplay based on 2 books that Bill Thomas wrote. I read the first book before I ever met him. I said, this is a film. This is the vehicle I believe I need to raise this consciousness and inspire this conversation. Over time, I met him. When I first broached the film idea, I know he just thought that was ridiculous. And I don't know why. He's a very forward-thinking person. As a visionary. But anyway, nevertheless, then I read the sequel and I decided that was really the title and the subject matter. It's around the same subject, but it's just presented in a different way. And I have just kept at it. There isn't a person that I speak to that I don't tell about this project. And interestingly enough, just a couple of weeks ago, I was introduced to an actor who has a production company, and he's very interested in bringing this project to fruition. Beautiful. So that never would have happened had I not consistently talked about it. But that also came from giving in a way. It was through a platform that is developing Alzheimer's prescriptives and a vaccine. It's Alzheimer's Neuro, it's what it's called.
Okay.
And I connected them with a neuroscientist studying brain capital. And so we got into that whole conversation about what's the other side of that coin. The other side of that coin is I think it's great if people live longer, if they live healthier, or if they have Alzheimer's, if the progression is slow to some degree.
Yeah.
But if we don't value and care for and treat older people in a better way, what's the point?
Exactly.
And then I went into my film project idea. It was a perfect segue. And they introduced me to Willie Ames. And there you go. So had I not been persistent and constantly talking about this, but who would have ever thought, like not in a million years, right?
Exactly. It's beautiful. It's synchronistic. And
right.
as a result of your relentlessness and
Right.
and belief in what you're doing and standing up for what you're doing. So I think it's beautiful. Speaking of success, Phyllis, how do you define that word? What does the word success mean to you?
Success isn't a destination. Success is a journey. It's a process. And, I guess I'd feel successful when the film is made. I'd feel success in that project coming to fruition. So I think it's more like when something comes to fruition. Like I felt a sense of success when I published each of my books. I was like, oh, wow, I finished this project. But it's not a destination, in my opinion. It's a journey. It's a constant. So that's what I would say really about success. Okay. Yes. Have I achieved certain benchmarks? Absolutely. I mean, I feel a sense of success that I'm an expert on this platform, babyboomer.org, next to Ken Dykewald. I mean, he's like huge in this space. And so, I mean, I had been trying to get Ken Dykewald on my podcast for several months, about a year or so ago, and was in touch with his company. I think it's called AgeWave. But anyway, now I'm on a platform next to him as an expert. Like, who would have thought, right?
Never in a million years.
A sense of achievement and success, but that's not a destination.
What would you say is one of the most important things you've learned in your life? And what was your life like before learning that? And what was your life like after you learned it?
It's something that I think I heard from somebody who is the wise advice that he gives many people. His name is Greg Reed. And he is the producer. I think I've told you about these phenomenal events.
Yes.
And I think it's don't seek the opinion of others, seek wise counsel. Because counsel, when you seek wise counsel, in all likelihood, it's somebody who's traveled that journey and could give you insights, recommendations, directions, because they've traveled that road. Almost like we're talking about elder wisdom, right?
Yeah.
But if you seek people's advice, well, very often that's just people who have an opinion and they haven't done it, oftentimes. So, I mean, I would think that I've really learned that from going to his events and meeting people that have walked a certain journey and taking counsel from them. I would say that that's a very important that I've learned. So it's not like I'm asking the person next to me or my family, what do you think? As a matter of fact, I don't share a lot of what I'm doing with certain members of my family anymore because it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It only matters the people who tell me, listen, I think you're on a path. This is what you need to know about this. Let me introduce you to somebody who might be able to
help
give you
get there
in that area, because somebody in my family might say, what the heck are you doing that for? Like, what do you know about making a film?
Yeah.
No, I don't. It's true. But
that's a great distinction. I love that. Thank you for sharing that, Phyllis. What is an unexpected blessing or occurrence in your life that you're grateful for?
I would say, listen, I turned 70 and I'm vital and active and, continue to learn and interested and passionate and following new ideas and roads. And I'm very grateful for that. Extremely grateful. I don't think about it often enough, to be perfectly honest. And I hadn't thought about that until you just asked me that question. And interestingly enough, for many years, especially working in the long-term care environment, and there are many people in that environment, people think it's all people that are like 70s, 80s, 90s, 100s. It's not true at all. There are many people in long-term care that are much younger, for whatever reason. And especially when I was working with people who were dependent on mechanical ventilation or who had trachs or respiratory conditions, I would say sometimes, gee, we complain about the small things, but, these people can't take a breath on their own, and how thankful we have to be for that. And we forget that sometimes. And I forgot it until you just asked me that question.
And that's that whole gratitude practice too,
Yeah.
that we spoke about earlier. Who in your life has had the biggest impact on you and why?
Great question. Well, I think I have a couple, actually. So I said about my father, who always encouraged questioning, that you learn by questioning and being aware and interested in your community, in your state, in your country. I mean, that was very important to him, to be what's the word I'm thinking of? To be an informed citizen. And about questioning, he always used to tell, my sister was 7 years my senior, and he always used to say to her, do you believe everything you see and read? Hear and read? Believe half of what you see and less of what you hear, something like that.
Yeah.
So I think those were important lessons. That goes with questioning. Don't just take it at face value, no matter what it is.
Yeah,
that's
for sure.
number one. And the funny thing is, I had my first mentor, I'd say, was a college professor. And even to this day, sometimes when I achieve something, I'll say, gee, he would be proud of me. It's funny. He had a tremendous impact. He was a debate and argumentation coach, but he was a really smart guy, encouraged me in many different arenas. And I didn't go down those paths, but he saw something in me. And now when I kind of go down those paths, I say, wow, he would be proud.
Love it.
So he had a tremendous impact. I'd say from that point of view, though, if I just had to select two people off the top of my head, but of course there have been many others who've impacted me and are an important part of this journey. So I'm going to say, I mentioned his name earlier, which is Bill Thomas. So he was called a visionary. Did I say that earlier?
Yes.
And he developed these models of care. And when I first read his book, Life Worth Living, it was about how he transformed this nursing home. And I said, wow, this guy's my personal and professional hero, because I've had difficulty making the smallest changes. And look what he did. I mean, he brought animals and plants and birds. I can't hundreds. And this state allowed him to do that, New York State. And when I finally met him, and I met him through somebody else, I said I was dying to meet him. And they said, wow, he's a friend of mine. Okay. And I had him on my podcast. And then a few months later, when I was writing my third book, I wanted him to write the foreword. I must have emailed him several times. And people said he wouldn't do that and he doesn't do that. And then I got this email from him. He said he'd be happy to write the foreword. I only had one conversation with him on my podcast. And he wrote something very complimentary to me in this email. And that kind of has carried me forward for a long time. And he knows that. I always say he was in what I'm doing on this path.
Yeah.
He was the person that really said, I see something in you. I won't say the words he actually used, but I see something in you and go forth and conquer because you can do it. So I think, there are always people along the line, hopefully, that have inspired you or that you've learned from. And
absolutely. What does the word empowerment mean to you?
I would say living your truth, whatever that is, feeling that for yourself. Nobody has to give you empowerment. You have to seize it. You have to feel it. You have to take it.
Yeah.
It's not always easy. I think I don't want to stereotype and say as women, it's harder than for men, but I think that it is a journey for women in a different way. I think for maybe the generation coming up now, maybe not so much.
Yeah.
But when I was coming up, I think it wasn't that easy a road.
For sure. Okay, we're going to jump into a little rapid fire section. So the next grouping of questions just be 1, 2, 3.
Oh, gee.
You can do it. Phyllis, how would you describe yourself in one word?
I'm not good at one words. As you can tell.
Come on, you can do it. I believe in you.
Goodness.
You've already used the word today in our conversation.
Creative, empathetic. I don't know.
Relentless.
Relentless, right. See, I am relentless. That is true.
There you go. If
you people can think of that positive and negatively, though. So
we're going to use it in only a positive light. Right. If you came with a warning label, what would yours say?
Be ready.
If you could teach the world one thing, what would that one thing be?
Empathy.
What's one thing you want but cannot buy with money?
Total self-belief.
What is one of your favorite entrepreneurial books?
Oh my God, I just went to say it.
It escaped.
Oh my gosh, I just went to say it. Napoleon Hill's book.
Think and Grow Rich. There you go. What is your favorite self-care practice?
By Positive Mind Hacks. It's one of my favorites, really. One of them.
And that concludes our rapid fire section. Now back to our regularly scheduled program. What is something surprising you've learned about yourself in the past year?
That's a great question. It goes back to what we were talking about, being relentless, really, in a way, because, even though I was talking about this film project and, I talked about it with everybody and I kept saying, I don't know how or where or why or how it's going to get done. I did believe it, but because you really don't know that path. So the fact that just a couple of weeks ago that I was talking with somebody who's in the process of filming with Robert Redford, I was just like blown away that, oh my goodness, how did this really happen? I know how it happened. I believed it, but I was kind of surprised at the same time. Does that make sense?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, a friend and colleague, I've known him for over 20 years. He keeps telling me that I should write my book. And, I kind of have a title, but because how do you go from just being a speech therapist?
That's not just.
Yeah, that's just not a just, but how do you go from that to every time I tell him about some of these connections or people or situations, he's just more amazed than the time before. And, I think it goes along with confidence.
Yeah.
It goes along with confidence because the fact that, I think I do still suffer from lack of confidence 100%.
We all do from time to time. We all go through that and deal with that. We're human.
I think that it's people, reaffirming the value that I have in so many different areas. Yeah. And I guess I never would have thought about meeting, people of a certain stature and asking me for help or advice or whatever. Right. So I think that's been very reaffirming for me. Not that a person should need that, but
it's nice to have.
But it's nice to have.
Absolutely. What would you say is one of the worst pieces of advice you've ever gotten? I want to flip it and say, people usually ask, what's the best piece? I want to know what's the worst piece you've ever gotten.
Don't do that. You'll never be able to do that.
I love it. What is one thing you love about yourself that is not related to your physical appearance?
My passion, my dedication.
How do you celebrate your wins?
I just have a sense of satisfaction, happiness, accomplishments. I smile. I tell myself, wow, that was great. I'm just going to go back, if I may, to when you said about a self-care practice, which I think it's helpful for anybody to really look in the mirror. I used to do it every day. I think I missed it the past few days for a variety of reasons. I haven't been 100% feeling so well, but, look in the mirror and say what you're grateful for about yourself, what you're happy for, what you're proud of yourself for, what you've accomplished. But I don't mean just look at the mirror. I mean, look at yourself in the mirror and look at a person smiling back at you. That's, there are endorphins that develop as, that you feel, your hormones and chemicals, and really uplift you. But also say to yourself what you haven't been so happy about and how you intend to rectify that.
Love it. Mirror work is so important. I mean, the relationship we have with ourselves is the hands down most important relationship we will ever have in our entire lives. And it's the longest lasting relationship we'll ever have. Treat yourself with love. Correct. Everything starts here within. We are the foundation for absolutely everything. Everything starts within us and self.
I say the place to begin is within and the time to begin is now. So it doesn't matter what age you are. Nope. If you haven't done it, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. So you can start that at any time. I don't care what age you are.
That's right.
But it will have tremendous benefits for you. And not only for you, but the
ripples out. Yes.
You and the people that in your family, the people, they will even see a difference.
Absolutely. And it will affect them as well. Just like we said earlier with the smile.
Yeah, a couple of days ago, my daughter sent me, they're redoing their kitchen, and she sent me pictures of her cabinets, and I said, they're beautiful. And they were coming on Saturday, and I asked her if they came. She said, yeah, but it likely won't get done till the end of the summer, so whatever. And I said to her, think differently about it. Just think, you never know.
Yeah.
Just think differently. Think, wow, these cabinets came. They look great. I can't wait until they're up and the kitchen is finished. I got a text. She said, okay. And she doesn't really subscribe to that kind of flip thinking so much. I got a text message from her yesterday with a picture of what she selected for the floor. And she said, we're doing it this weekend. I said, see,
there you go.
It was just flipping that script in your head.
That's right.
By the way, that's also not an easy thing to do.
No.
To be able to just flip it. So when you're in the throes of something, if you can, reframe it in some way, shape, or form, or even afterwards, it's very important. And in terms of what I tell a younger person, tell my younger self, you attract who you are and what you are, both negative and positive.
Yep, absolutely.
So if you're putting out negativity, you'll likely get more of it.
It's going to come right back to you.
Here she said, okay, I'm going to do that. And look, a few days later, by some miracle, however that happened, now it's going to get done this weekend.
Exactly.
And had she not done that, they probably would have not made any progress and it wouldn't have gotten done till the end of the summer.
That's right. If you had the opportunity to sit down and have a 1-hour conversation with one woman, any woman in the world, who would it be and why?
Well, there is one person I've been dying to talk to for a long time, for years, and that's Maria Shriver.
Okay.
I saw her at a luncheon several years ago. I thought she was phenomenal. I loved her authenticity, her openness about what she experienced. But because of her work in Alzheimer's research, I really want to have a conversation with her about the other side of that coin, which is it's not just about cure, but it's about caring. And how are we caring for the people that are living with Alzheimer's now and their families? I'm sure, if I thought about women in history, but I actually have Maria Shriver's name on my mirror. And I look at it every day. So, you never know, because I met somebody recently who I may be co-authoring a book with. We're still in conversation and she knows somebody who knows Maria Shriver. So
you never know.
You just don't
put it out there.
I would love to have a conversation with her and a conversation with her on her podcast.
Well, there you go.
That very topic.
You've just put it out into the universe through this conversation. So you never know. Wouldn't that be incredible?
You never know. You never know.
If you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would that piece of advice be?
I think what I just said. You attract who you are, both positive and negative. And whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Love it. Lastly, Phyllis, if you were to deliver your last 30-second speech to the world, your corner of the world, your tribe, your people, what would that last 30 seconds sound like? What words of wisdom would you impart?
That we have to care for, value, and treat older people with the dignity and respect that they deserve, because they are repositories of history. And what you learn from them, with them, and through them will have tremendous impact for your person and for whatever endeavor you are pursuing.
Beautifully said. Phyllis, thank you so very much for this incredibly beautiful, inspirational, and educational conversation. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. I've thoroughly enjoyed every minute of our conversation. You're such a beautiful soul, and I truly appreciate from the bottom of my heart all the incredible work you're doing with these initiatives. They are so important and they get forgotten and swept under the rug. And so just please keep shining your bright, beautiful light out into the world through all the incredible work you're doing. I think it's amazing. And I just appreciate you. And I'm honored to have you as a member of the Empowerography community. So thank you for taking and making the time to be here with me today.
Hey, thank you so much. This conversation has been enlightening. And I would say for me, even transformative. So I have to thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Once again, my name is Brad Walsh, host of your Empowerography podcast. Today, my guest has been Phyllis Ayman. She is an ambassador for conscious aging life management, the founder of Mindful Longevity Solutions. She has the trademark for empathy, the hallmark of the EMPathy Project. She's a best-selling author, a coach, a gerontological speech and language pathologist, a dementia care specialist, and a podcast host. I appreciate you, Phyllis. Have an amazing rest of the day.
Thanks. Same to you. And I hope all the listeners really enjoy this conversation as much as I did.
Thank you. Thank you very much for listening to this podcast. If you haven't yet, please be sure to subscribe, rate, review, and share with all your friends. You can find me at viseuphoria.ca and follow me on Instagram at Empowerography Podcast and on Facebook at Empowerography. Please join me next time for another inspirational story from yet another amazing woman.